As Muslims, we've been saying for decades that terrorism has nothing to do with Islam. Unfortunately, in response, we've been accused of being dishonest about the true teachings of Islam.
But before we get to that, Robert, I mean, do you condemn Hamas?
Do you condemn Hamas?
No, do you? Are you a terrorist?
Condemn Hamas?
No, you're a terrorist.
No, you're a terrorist. You are a terrorist, and I know so because everyone's been telling me so.
I don't condemn Hamas. It's not obligatory to condemn Hamas. I condemn Israel.
Islamophobes say, yeah, of course terrorism is a part of Islam. It's just politically incorrect to say so because Muslims are too embarrassed to admit it.
Apparently not you. A Muslim who condemns October 7th is a hypocrite and a traitor to Islam.
The first thing to debunk is the apologetic claim that Islam means peace. For example, Islam promotes a specific form of government called the Khilafah or Caliphate. And the Caliphate is supposed to implement the Sharia or Islamic law. And it worked, so far. It has delayed, it has put a huge wrench in the gears of Saudi-Israel normalization. This is simply because every government endorses violence. Now, some liberal Muslims will claim that jihad is only defensive, but this is just dishonest apologetics. Consideration must be given to the likely consequences of launching military attacks. The caliph must decide whether the pros of launching a military attack outweigh the cons. Do the benefits for the Muslim nation outweigh the harm?
So, it's not, is jihad wrong because it harms people? It's not that.
Do the benefits for the Muslim nation outweigh the harm? Jihad has particular goals. One of these goals is to protect Muslims. A second related goal is to protect the religion of Islam and to spread this religion to new people and lands while also furthering the material interests of the Muslim Ummah. The term jihad applies to both defensive wars and offensive wars fought with these goals in mind.
So, according to Daniel Haqiqatjou, Islamists have the right to offensively attack the world to spread Islam and the material interest of Muslims. Yet Israel doesn't have the right to a state and should be dismantled from the river to the sea.
The leader is given the choice to refrain from jihad if it's likely to result in harmful consequences for Muslims. The classical jurist Ibn Rushd writes, is it permissible for Muslims to have peace agreements with non-Muslims? Some scholars permit this without conditions if the ruler sees that it has beneficial consequences for Muslims. Other scholars hold it's only permissible when Muslims are facing severe difficulties like a civil war.
Let me repeat what you just said so people can understand. You said offensive jihad is a good thing to spread Islam and the material interest of Muslims unless there is a peace treaty when you are weak to do so. And even that is disputed by some scholars who take an even more hard line against peace with non-Muslims.
Another major classical jurist, Ibn Qudama, articulates a similar perspective. He asserts that jihad expeditions should ideally be undertaken at least once per year.
Offensive jihad should ideally be undertaken at least once a year. Thank God, Daniel, you made this video and you eased the mind of people. Before you did this video, we all thought Islam was aggressive.
Jihad is necessary once per year, except where there is an excuse, like if the Muslims are weak with regards to numbers or equipment. For example, suppose that the present leader of Pakistan decided to recklessly launch missiles at India, knowing that this would invite a nuclear retaliation that would wipe out all Pakistanis. Such an act of war would be completely reprehensible according to Islam.
Why though? Because you care about the millions of Hindus that are going to die? No, because they might retaliate against Muslims. Okay, all these are the anathema of moral philosophy, okay? In the type of Islam Daniel subscribes to, there is no morality, there is only the interest of Islam. In the current conflict in Gaza, some might even argue that Islamists care for children, just not as much as to restrain from orchestrating their death and suffering for their political agenda, and then use them as bulletproof vests. Other than that, they care. In fact, they care so much that I am inspired to sing a song. There was a time, if you will, to let the place, and we all to come together as one. There are people dying. Oh, won't you make a change? We all could make a better change. Oh, you and me. Πάμε άλλη ντάουα. We are the world. We are the children.
Watch in the following video how Daniel the Muslim skeptic exposes his true political concern behind the fake Palestinian liberation and humanitarian facade, which is to establish the caliphate. We can also drive that he appreciates Hamas using Palestinian blood and tears to achieve this ultimate objective. Finally, note the anti-Semitic remarks about Jews being perpetrators of shorts behind World War I and behind the war on terror.
Zionism seeks a Jewish homeland in Palestine, but securing that homeland doesn't just mean destroying the population that's already there. It also means destroying any kind of genuine Muslim political unity. Up until World War I, Palestine was controlled and protected by the chief Islamic empire, which was the Ottoman Caliphate. It was this caliphate that provided a real foundation for Muslim political and civilizational unity. Zionists then created a plan to destroy the caliphate. By the time of World War I, the Zionist lobby had already established strong influence over U.S. foreign policy. The Zionists promised to bring the U.S. into the war on the side of Britain to enable Britain to defeat Germany and the Ottomans. But in return, Zionists demanded a British commitment to strip Palestine away from the Ottomans and allocate the land for a future Israeli state. Now, what's significant for us today is that the continued existence of Israel doesn't merely require the one-time destruction of Muslim political and civilizational unity. It requires that this unity never return. Destroying Muslim unity was a major aim of the two-decade-long war on terror, including the U.S. invasions of Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. It's also the aim of the Abraham Accords. Muslim unity is, frankly, a threat to Israel. Nowadays, you have some so-called Muslim groups like the Medkhalis who are pushing for normalization with Israel. Not coincidentally, the Medkhalis are constantly attacking the concept of the caliphate and smearing any Muslim who calls for re-establishing the caliphate a terrorist.
Netanyahu tells Elon Musk his plan to destroy Islam with the help of Arab regimes.
We have first a mission to destroy Hamas. Nothing's going to stop that, because if you want peace, destroy Hamas. You first have to get rid of the poisonous regime, as you did in Germany, as you did in Japan, in World War II. These were two.
There's no choice. There's no choice.
So that's a prerequisite.
Yes.
In this clip, Netanyahu tells Elon Musk his plans to destroy Hamas-type radical Islam. Yet, the Muslim skeptic says, Netanyahu tells Elon Musk his plan to destroy Islam. So it's fair to assume that in the mind of the Muslim skeptic, Hamas type of radical Islam is true Islam.
But then look at what happened. What you had in Japan under Douglas MacArthur was a cultural reformation. And Japan that you visit today is so different from Japan of the 1930s. Well, is that possible in the Arab world? And I categorically say, of course it is. We've seen it in the Gulf states. There was, in fact, a cultural change there. That same thing is, in my opinion, happening to a considerable extent in Saudi Arabia. The de-radicalization of these Muslim countries, these Arab countries. So we have to do the same thing. We have to demilitarize Gaza, and we have to de-radicalize Gaza, especially work on the mosques and on the schools. That's where children imbibe their values. And then we have to also rebuild Gaza, and I hope to have our Arab friends help in that context.
September 20th, Fox News had an interview with MBS, Mohammed bin Salman,
and then followed by an interview with Netanyahu. In the interview with MBS, he asked him, what is the process of normalization with Israel? Where is it now? And MBS answered, we are getting closer to reaching an agreement day by day. We are getting closer. However, the Zionist leaders, the Israeli leaders, have to look after the demands and rights of the Palestinians.
Daniel, what they'll say is this. They'll say, look, Mohammed bin Salman, head of Saudi Arabia, or the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, he's saying, I will give you normalization if you give the Palestinians their rights, their two-state solution. Some people say that's a great thing.
Was that really the condition that he gave? Like, is that really what's on the table? Is give the Palestinians their own state? Like, what state would that really look like?
It will look like you Islamists won't have a caliphate built on the blood and tears of Palestinians. Instead, Palestinians will have an opportunity to live peacefully with Israelis in their own state without blockade and restrictions of movement. What you also supposedly care about when you make your fake liberation and humanitarian arguments. When admittedly orchestrated and anticipated the death and suffering of Palestinians in the recent attacks against Israel, with purpose to torpedo the normalization process and any chance for alleviation of Palestinian suffering that will compromise your human shield and blood leverage to establish a caliphate.